So what does the garden look like at this time of year? It's been a while since I've recorded a video because, to be honest, the garden has been pounded by storms and rain, and it's just not been good. I did wonder one day when the fiercest gale was blowing if I would come out and show you how the trees and the large rhododendrons were thrashing about, but decided against it. So anyway, the garden is probably, at this time of year, about as big a mess as it's ever going to be. The trees, the acers, you can see the bare side of that tree on the east was where the winds came and ripped the leaves off. The other side now, there's just a few remaining. Most of the leaves are down on the ground. In the foreground, the lovely little larch has just about lost its needles. And then we'll have all these lovely cones as decoration through the year. A willow, a lovely salix, dwarf salix, growing in the trough there. It will spread, that one. It's not quite so dwarf. And then this pile of stuff here, this is the Cyananthus lobatus and microphyllus that were growing on this end of this bed, and I've just lifted them off because the bulbs are starting to push through, and if I leave that wet soggy mass of a cover, it just gives an ideal home for the slugs to go in and eat the bulbs and other plants. But not only that, if you look down, there's the Cyananthus microphyllus, new growth coming, right? It was completely covered and it's poking up through. There's what the rest of the bed looks like, and it needs to be tidied. But I've taken a break. I've done a bit of blowing here to blow the leaves a bit, starting, but you know, you can see how wet the ground is. It's very difficult to get a good clean in this weather. But just to let you see how it looks, I'm sure your gardens maybe look tidier than this, but maybe if they're not, then it will give you heart to know that you're not alone. This is the time of year when there's so much to do, but there's plenty of time to do it. As long as those leaves aren't going to damage anything else. Here's the Eucomis tricolour. Been frosted, the leaves now, they've gone that semi-translucent and are finally dying back. The cyclamen leaves all over the garden. Although we don't have the great carpets of cyclamen hydrifolium and that others have, we do have an interesting range scattered about, and this is a nice group of silver seedlings growing here, looking rather nice among the small acer leaves. But turning around across the bulb bed, you know, this, as I'm tidying and blowing away, which I'll continue to do basically all through the winter, taking bit by bit. But as I clear and look, you can see why we need to clear up, because already the shoots, here we see shoots of, that's I think is a leucojum, and there this narcissus, the snowdrops are pushing through. They're not far behind either, so there's a mass of stuff, noses coming through the ground. So there is plenty. Around the garden there's these various piles of shredded mulch that I'm starting to break up and move off and just spread out a bit. Here's one over there, you can see the dark mass of I've just spread it around, and I'll spread that one soon. Because my worry is there's bulbs down below there, and they'll be encouraged to grow all the way up through that pile if I don't spread it out soon. Epimedium leaves, the hellebore leaves, some ferns still hanging about, so there is still some interest. Rhododendrons, we speak about rhododendrons being evergreen, but they do shed their leaves after. Some shed them every year, so the leaves just last a year. Others hang on to them for 2 years, and I'm not sure if any hang on for 3 or not. But when they do shed, you get some nice colour. There's some of the Corydalis coming through there. These are Corydalis Craigton Blue. These are Craigton Blue seedlings, so strictly speaking, not Craigton Blue. The Veratrum finally, with the frosts, gave up. And as we move around, it's the same thing, a mass of leaves, and in some of the beds I'm happy to leave the leaves. Where there's these smaller leaves, it's fine. When you get the bigger leaves like this is a big leaf off of Acer Platanoides, a Crimson King. They're big, they take longer to break down, so I do like to get most of them up. But as for the others, I'm quite happy to leave them on some beds just as a natural mulch. They will have to come off the path. And then of course, typical sign of the birds, foraging. When I was clearing a bit in the front garden, I found just under the surface and amongst the humus a whole huge population of some little wiggly grubby things. They were quite tiny, and as soon as I moved on I just left them exposed and the robin and the birds were down. So leaving this mulch, that microscopic and tiny fauna does feed on them, and then in turn the birds and other critters can come and feed on the. So it's all part of the food chain of the garden. Nice green, the bed by the pond, the Geranium Robertianum. I love it as a cover. Here's a seedling off of the Sorbus. So just walk around. It's just a brief video really, because there's so much to do. I've yet to get to this section of the garden, but you can see the leaves, but they're so wet and so pounded. But I will, as the weather suits, get up here and get all these leaves blown up and scooped up and tidied up and moved. Where they're on the paths and need to be moved, they'll go up to the compost heaps to turn into leaf mould. And then others can just get blown into some of these beds up the back. They can get blown up in there and form a lovely leaf mulch. I suppose the plants that stand out are the lovely Salmisia walkeri. There's cyclamen growing through it, that's Cyclamen purpurascens down in there. Some of the wee Gualtheria pyraloides. A lot of these wee Gualtherias have had a challenging year for a few years with the hot, dry weather. Some of them were getting scorched, but this year we didn't have that such a hot, dry spell. It's been cooler and moister. One of the hybrid Pernetia was called Pernetia Pearls. A nice wee thing with these little berries, little fruits. But through the leaves we can see the Leucogenes, Leontopodium, and other Salmisias there poking through. These were cuttings I took, and this was gravel, but I gave up trying to keep it clear of plants. Now I'm planting it up. You can see the bags and some of my equipment laid out there still as I work my way up this path, clearing this path. You can see the difference between bits that I haven't been to and then the bit beyond where I've got an initial clean up. But as there's still more leaves to come down, this will be ongoing for some time. If I step over the chaos in the garden, Orosema fruit in amongst the fallen leaves. But in amongst the old stuff, the old Lilium pyrenaicum stems will get cleared eventually. But here among them is the new leaves coming, Corydalis craton purple. But there's lots of buds and promise of things. The rhododendron Thomsoni has set great flower buds. The other rhododendrons. And across the garden, up the skyline's getting more and more open as there's few leaves on the trees there. But there's a host of berries on the cotoneasters you can see in the distance there on the western edge of the boundary, covered in berries for the birds. Cyclamen, more cyclamen here. These are all cyclamen, coum, massa, different ones flowering down there. And I'll just finish. I've not really shown much of the glass houses this year because I am cutting back seriously. But just to finish and show you that as the garden shuts down outside, inside the bulbs are starting. The narcissus are starting to come out. And they'll give us interest through the winter until the garden wakens up. It won't be long before it starts to waken again. So I'll need to get back to my work now, and while it's dry, do a bit more work. So thanks for joining me if you come in this time. So that's a winter bulb log diary, video diary. Hope you're getting on with your tidying and clearing your garden where necessary, and leaving some areas just to decay naturally for the wildlife. See you next time. Bye.